The barrel cracked against her skull so hard her knees buckled. Derek Ward grabbed a fistful of Sarah Bennett's hair, dragged her across her own kitchen floor, and shoved the gun so deep into her cheek it split the skin. "Your husband has 12 hours, he snarled. "After that, I start with the girl." Blood ran down Sarah's jaw. Her 11-year-old daughter was screaming upstairs. 3 armed men stood in her home like they owned it. They thought they had a helpless woman. They thought wrong. Her husband was a Navy SEAL, and she had already sent the signal. Now subscribe, follow this story to the very end, and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story reaches. The phone rang at 6:14 in the evening, and Sarah Bennett almost didn't answer it. She was standing in the kitchen, stirring a pot of chili, humming along to an old Fleetwood Mac song playing from the speaker on the counter. Her daughter Lily was upstairs doing homework. The house smelled like cumin and onions and warmth. It smelled like safety. She picked up the phone on the 4th ring. "Mrs. Bennett." The voice on the other end was polite, professional, the kind of voice that could belong to a bank teller or a doctor's receptionist. "Yes, this is she." "Ma'am, I'm calling from Patriot Federal Credit Union. We've detected some unusual activity on your husband's account. Could you verify a few details for us?" Sarah paused. She moved the spoon to the edge of the pot and lowered the heat. "What kind of unusual activity?" "A large transfer, ma'am, over $40,000. We just need to confirm your husband's current address and his date of birth." Sarah's stomach tightened, not because of the money, because Michael didn't have an account at Patriot Federal. She knew every account, every deposit, every automatic payment. She managed all of it while he was deployed. There was no Patriot Federal anything in their life. "I'm sorry," she said carefully. "Can I call you back? I need to check something." "Of course, ma'am. Take your time." The line went dead. Sarah stood there for a long moment staring at the phone. Then she walked to the front window and pulled the curtain aside just an inch. A dark SUV was parked across the street. It hadn't been there 20 minutes ago. The engine was off, but someone was sitting in the driver's seat. She could see the faint glow of a phone screen. Her heart rate climbed. But she didn't panic. Panic was a luxury she had trained herself out of years ago. Michael had made sure of that. He never scared her with worst-case scenarios. He simply taught her what to do if the world ever came knocking the wrong way. She grabbed her own phone from the counter, opened a secure messaging app that looked like a calculator, and typed 4 words. "Blue Robin. Code 7. Then she deleted the message history, set the phone on the counter screen down, and went back to stirring the chili. Upstairs, Lily called out, "Mom, can I have a snack?" "Dinner's almost ready, baby. 10 more minutes." "But I'm starving." "You'll survive. 10 minutes." Sarah smiled, but her hands were shaking. She gripped the spoon tighter and breathed through her nose. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Just like Michael taught her, just like she'd practiced 100 times alone in this kitchen, after he deployed, standing in the quiet, reminding herself that she was not helpless. She was not fragile. She was the wife of a man who hunted the most dangerous people on earth. And that meant she had to be dangerous too, in her own way. 7 minutes later, the doorbell rang. Sarah wiped her hands on a towel and walked to the front door. She looked through the peephole. A man stood on the porch, mid-30s, clean-shaven, wearing a gray jacket and jeans. He looked like a neighbor. He looked like someone who might ask to borrow a lawnmower. She opened the door halfway. "Can I help you?" The man smiled. "Mrs. Bennett, I'm sorry to bother you. My name is Tom. I just moved in down the block, and I think your dog got into my yard." "Big golden retriever." Sarah didn't have a dog. "I think you have the wrong house," she said. The man tilted his head. "Are you sure? Tall fence, blue mailbox." "I'm sure." She started to close the door. That's when the man's hand shot forward and caught the edge. His smile didn't change, but something behind his eyes did. Something cold slid into place like a mask being pulled down. "I think you should let me in." "Mrs. Bennett." Before she could respond, 2 more men appeared from the side of the house. One was large, wide-shouldered, with a shaved head and a neck tattoo that crawled up behind his ear. The other was thin, twitchy, with darting eyes and a pistol already in his hand. The man at the door, the one who called himself Tom, pushed the door open with one arm. Sarah stumbled back. The 3 men stepped inside. The thin one closed the door behind them and locked it. "Where's your husband?" and the man who called himself Tom asked. His voice had changed. The politeness was gone. It was flat now. Transactional. Sarah's back pressed against the hallway wall. Her eyes moved from one man to the next. She measured them. The big one was muscle. He'd be slow. The thin one was nervous. He'd be unpredictable. But the man in front of her, Tom, or whatever his real name was, he was the one in charge. He was the one she needed to watch. "He's not here," Sarah said. "I know he's not here. That's why I'm asking where he is." "I don't know." The man studied her face for a long moment. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a photograph. He held it up in front of her. It was a picture of Michael, taken from a distance. He was walking across a parking lot wearing civilian clothes, carrying a duffel bag. It was recent, maybe a week old. "Your husband took something that doesn't belong to him," the man said, "and the people I work for want it back." Sarah's throat tightened, but she kept her face still. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I think you do." The big man moved past her and walked into the kitchen. She heard him opening drawers. The thin man stayed by the door, his gun hanging at his side, his eyes scanning the room like a bird watching for predators. "Mom." Lily's voice came from the top of the stairs, small, confused. "Mom, who's at the door?" Every molecule in Sarah's body went cold. She looked at the man in front of her, and for the first time she let him see something real in her eyes. Not fear, warning. "If you touch my daughter," she said quietly, "there is no place on this planet where you will be safe." The man smiled. "That's very dramatic, Mrs. Bennett, but you're not in a position to make threats." He turned his head toward the stairs. "Sweetheart, come on down here. Your mom wants you to join us." "Lily, stay upstairs." His voice cracked through the house like a gunshot. "Go to your room and lock the door. Do it now." She heard Lily's footsteps scramble. A door slammed shut. The lock clicked. The man in the gray jacket sighed. He reached up and rubbed his jaw like she had just made his evening more difficult. "That wasn't smart. I told you, he's not here. I don't know where he is. Whatever you think he took, I can't help you." "Then we wait." He pulled a chair from the dining table and sat down. He crossed one leg over the other and folded his hands in his lap, as casual as a man waiting for a bus. "Marcus, check upstairs. Bring the girl down." The big man moved toward the stairs. Sarah stepped in front of him. She put both hands on his chest and pushed. It was like pushing a wall. He looked down at her with something between amusement and annoyance. "Move," he said. "No." He grabbed her wrist and twisted. Pain shot up her arm. She gasped but didn't cry out. She held his gaze and said it again, slower this time. "No." The thin man by the door laughed, a high, unpleasant sound. "She's got fight, Derek. I like that." The man in the chair, Derek, didn't laugh. He watched Sarah with the patience of someone who had done this many times before. Someone who knew that resistance was just a phase, something people did before they broke. "Marcus," he said calmly, "don't hurt her, just bring the girl." Marcus shoved Sarah aside. She hit the wall hard, her shoulder cracking against the door frame. But she got back up. She always got back up. That was the rule. Michael had drilled it into her. No matter what happens, you get back up. You breathe. You think. You survive. Marcus climbed the stairs. Sarah heard him try the door to Lily's room. Locked. He knocked twice, almost politely. "Open up, sweetheart." Silence. He knocked again, harder. "I said open the door." Then a sound that made Sarah's blood freeze. Wood splintering. He had kicked it in. Lily screamed. Sarah lunged for the stairs, but the thin man grabbed her arm and yanked her back. She spun and slammed her elbow into his throat. He staggered, choking his gun, clattering to the floor. She dove for it. Her fingers closed around the grip. She swung it up toward Derek. Derek hadn't moved from the chair. He was looking at her with what might have been respect. Or maybe it was just curiosity, the way a scientist looks at a rat that has learned to open its cage. "Put it down," he said. "Get your man away from my daughter." "You're not going to shoot me, Mrs. Bennett." "Try me." They stared at each other. The thin man was still on the floor, gagging, holding his throat. Upstairs, Lily was crying. Marcus's heavy footsteps moved across the floor above them. Derek uncrossed his legs and leaned forward. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to put that gun down. Marcus is going to bring your daughter downstairs. And we're all going to sit here like civilized people until your husband calls. Because he will call. He always calls. And when he does, you're going to tell him to come home. And then this will all be over. And if I don't, Derek's expression didn't change. Then this gets ugly. And I don't think you want your daughter to see ugly. Sarah's hand trembled. The gun felt heavier than it should have. She thought about pulling the trigger. She thought about what would happen next. Marcus was still upstairs with Lily. Even if she dropped Derek, the thin man would recover. And Marcus would have her daughter. She lowered the gun. Derek nodded slowly. Smart woman. He gestured to the thin man. Ray, get up. Take the weapon. Ray pulled himself off the floor, his face red and furious. He snatched the gun from Sarah's hand and backhanded her across the face. Her head snapped to the side. She tasted blood. Try that again, Ray hissed. See what happens. Enough, Derek said, not out of kindness, out of control. He needed Sarah functional. He needed her voice clear when Michael called. Marcus came down the stairs carrying Lily. The girl was 11 years old with her mother's dark hair and her father's stubborn jaw. She was crying, but she wasn't hysterical. She was looking at her mother with wide, searching eyes, waiting for a signal, waiting to be told what to do. Sarah opened her arms. Come here, baby. Marcus set Lily down, and the girl ran to her mother. Sarah wrapped her arms around her and held on tight. She pressed her lips to Lily's ear and whispered something so quietly that no one else in the room could hear it. Daddy's coming. Lily pulled back and looked at her mother. Sarah gave one small nod, almost invisible, but Lily saw it, and something changed in the girl's face. The fear didn't disappear, but it moved to the side. Something else took its place. Trust. Derek watched them with his arms crossed. Sweet. Really touching. Now sit down, both of you. They sat on the couch. Sarah kept her arm around Lily. She could feel her daughter's heartbeat against her ribs. Fast, but steady. Stronger than it should be for a kid her age in a situation like this. Ray paced by the window, still rubbing his throat. He kept looking at Sarah with that mixture of anger and something else. Something that looked almost like fear. She had surprised him. He didn't like being surprised. Marcus stood near the kitchen like a boulder someone had dropped in the middle of the house. He hadn't said much. He didn't need to. His size was his language. Derek pulled out his phone and checked the time. Then he looked at Sarah. How often does he call? Every few days, sometimes less. When was the last time? 3 days ago. Then he's due. Derek smiled, and it was the kind of smile that belonged in a room with no windows. We'll wait. Sarah said nothing. She held Lily closer and stared at the man in the chair. She counted his breaths. She noted the slight bulge under his jacket on the left side. Another weapon. She looked at the windows. The curtains were drawn. She looked at the clock on the wall. It had been 14 minutes since she sent the message. Michael had once told her something she never forgot. He was lying next to her in bed 3 weeks before deployment, staring at the ceiling in the dark. She had asked him if he was afraid. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I'm never afraid of the enemy. Sarah, I'm afraid of not getting home in time. She had asked him, in time for what? And he had said, in time for you. Now sitting on this couch with a gun pointed at her family, Sarah understood what he meant. Michael wasn't just a soldier. He was a clock, ticking toward the people he loved, always counting down the distance between where he was and where they needed him to be. And the clock had started. Derek leaned back in the chair and pulled a second phone from his pocket, a burner. He dialed a number and held it to his ear. Someone answered. We're in, Derek said. She's here. The kid too. No sign of him yet. We'll hold position. He listened for a moment, then he said, understood, and hung up. He looked at Sarah. My employer wants me to tell you something. He says your husband made a mistake, a big one. And the only way this ends well for your family is full cooperation. No games, no tricks, no heroes. Sarah met his eyes. And what does your employer think a Navy SEAL's wife does when someone puts a gun to her daughter's head? Derek blinked, just once. It was fast, barely there, but Sarah caught it. A flicker, the first crack in his armor. What did you say? You heard me? The room went quiet. Ray stopped pacing. Marcus shifted his weight. Even Lily went still. Derek leaned forward. Your husband is military. Sarah didn't answer. Derek's jaw tightened. He looked at Ray. Ray looked at Marcus. A silent conversation passed between them. 3 men realizing in the same slow, sickening moment that they might have walked into the wrong house at the wrong time, for the wrong reasons. It doesn't matter, Derek said. But his voice was different now, a half-tone higher. The chair creaked as he shifted. One man, even a SEAL, he can't do anything from wherever he is. Sarah smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It wasn't a brave smile. It was the kind of smile Michael wore before he kicked in a door. You don't know where he is, she said. That's the problem. Derek stared at her. His hand moved to the gun on his hip. He didn't draw it, but his fingers wrapped around the grip. Call him, Derek said. Right now. I can't. He calls me. Then we wait. Yes, Sarah said. We wait. And outside in the falling dark, something moved. Not a sound, not a shadow, something less than that. Something that existed between heartbeats in the space where breath paused and the world held still. Something that was already here. The signal had traveled 4,000 miles in under 3 seconds. It bounced through 2 encrypted satellites, hit a relay station in Ramstein, Germany, and landed on a secure device strapped to the wrist of Chief Petty Officer Michael Bennett while he was lying face down in a drainage ditch outside a village he wasn't supposed to be in. He felt the vibration before he saw the screen. 2 short pulses, 1 long. The pattern his wife was never supposed to use unless everything had gone wrong. Blue Robin, code 7. Michael's blood went cold, not the slow creeping cold of worry, the instant full-body cold of a man who has just been told that the only thing in the world he cannot lose is being taken from him. He rolled onto his side and looked at the man lying next to him. Lieutenant Commander Jake Torres, 36 years old, built like a welding tank, the kind of man who could carry 200 pounds of gear up a mountain and crack a joke at the top. Jake, Michael's voice was barely a whisper. What? Blue Robin. Jake's head turned. In 12 years of operating together, Michael had never seen Jake's face change that fast. The smirk disappeared. The casual ease vanished. What replaced it was something mechanical. Something that had been built through 1,000 rehearsals and 100 real missions. Pure operational focus. When Jake asked, just now, Sarah, she sent it. Jake didn't ask anything else. He keyed his radio. Reaper 6, this is Reaper 2. We have a home fire alert. Say again, home fire. Request immediate extraction and redirect. How copy? The radio crackled. A voice came back, calm and professional. Reaper 2, copy home fire. Stand by for extraction. ETA 12 minutes. Michael stared at the screen on his wrist. The message was already gone. Deleted automatically after transmission. But the words burned behind his eyes like a brand. Blue Robin. Their daughter's favorite color, and their daughter's middle name. Code 7, the worst code. The one that meant armed intruders inside the house with family present. He closed his eyes and did something he almost never did on an operation. He prayed, not to God exactly, to Sarah, to whatever force kept her standing when the world tried to knock her down. Hold on, he thought, just hold on. I'm coming. 11 minutes later, a Black Hawk appeared over the ridgeline. Michael and Jake sprinted to it, climbed in, and before the door was closed, Michael was already on the satellite phone. Ops Center, this is Chief Bennett. I need a direct patch to NCIS Field Office, Virginia Beach, and local law enforcement dispatch for my home address. I need it now. Chief, we need to confirm your authorization. My family is being held at gunpoint, confirm that. Authorization code, Tango 77 Bravo Delta. Move. Silence, then a different voice. Older, more authority. Chief Bennett, this is Captain Morrison. I've confirmed your code. We're patching you through now. What do you need? I need a tactical team on standby within a 5-block radius of my home. No sirens, no lights, no approach until I'm on site. These people have my wife and my daughter, and if they see a badge, I don't know what they'll do. Understood. What's your ET show? Michael looked at the pilot. The pilot held up 4 fingers, then made a fist. 40 minutes to the airfield. Then a flight back to the States. Hours. Too many hours. Too long, Michael said. Way too long. Jake put a hand on his shoulder. We'll make it. You don't know that. I know you, and I know Sarah. She'll hold. Michael gripped the phone so hard the casing creaked. Get me Tex. Jake's eyebrows went up. Tex is stateside. He rotated home last week. He's in Norfolk. You want him to go to the house. I want him close, not inside, close, eyes on. If anything changes, if anyone leaves with Sarah or Lily, he follows. He does not engage unless there's an immediate threat to life. Can you get him? Jake already had his own phone out. On it. 2,200 miles away in a one-bedroom apartment in Norfolk, Virginia, a man named Tex Rollins was eating cold pizza and watching a baseball game when his phone buzzed. He looked at the screen. Jake Torres. He answered. Yeah. Tex, it's Jake. Michael's family is in trouble. Armed intruders at his house. Sarah sent a code 7. Tex was already standing. The pizza box hit the floor. He was moving to the closet where he kept his gear. How many pasticai? Unknown. At least 2, probably more. Kids. Lily's in the house. Tex pulled a black bag from the top shelf. Inside was a plate carrier, a sidearm, extra magazines, a fixed blade knife, a pair of night vision goggles, and a med kit. He'd packed it the same way every day for 15 years. Some men kept a go bag for hurricanes. Tex kept one for war. I'm 20 minutes out, Tex said. Rules of engagement. Eyes only, observe and report. Do not engage unless someone is about to die. Michael's inbound, but he's hours away. Copy, I'm moving. Tex hung up, grabbed his keys, and walked out the door without turning off the TV. The baseball game played to an empty room. Back at the Bennett house, time had turned into something thick and suffocating. Sarah sat on the couch with Lily pressed against her side. Derek was still in the chair, but he'd gotten quieter, more watchful. The revelation that Michael was a SEAL had changed the air in the room. Not enough to make Derek leave, but enough to make him nervous. And nervous men with guns were the most dangerous kind. Ray had moved to the kitchen. Sarah could hear him opening the refrigerator, eating her food, going through her drawers. Every sound made her skin crawl. He was touching her life, pawing through it like it belonged to him. Marcus stood at the bottom of the stairs, arms crossed, silent. He hadn't spoken more than 10 words since they'd arrived, but his eyes never stopped moving. I need to use the bathroom, Sarah said. Derek looked at her. Hold it. My daughter needs water. She can wait. Lily squeezed Sarah's hand. Sarah squeezed back. 3 times, their code. 3 squeezes meant I love you. They'd done it since Lily was 3 years old. How long are you going to keep us here? Sarah asked. As long as it takes. And what exactly are you waiting for? My husband isn't going to call. Not tonight, not tomorrow. He's on a mission. Derek's jaw flexed. Then you better hope that mission ends soon. And if it doesn't, Derek leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Let me explain something to you, Mrs. Bennett. The people I work for don't lose. They don't give up. They don't walk away. Your husband intercepted a shipment that was worth more money than you will see in 10 lifetimes. He handed it over to people who had no right to it. And now my employers want compensation. Either your husband returns what he took or he pays in other ways. Sarah stared at him. He's a Navy SEAL. He was doing his job. His job cost my employers $47 million. The number hung in the air. Sarah didn't flinch, but inside something clicked into place. This wasn't personal. This was business. Derek wasn't a psychopath. He was an employee. A well-dressed, cold-blooded employee who would do whatever his bosses told him to do because that was what he was paid for. That made him more predictable. And predictable was something she could work with. You're not going to hurt us, Sarah said. Derek's eyes narrowed. Excuse me. You need us alive. If you hurt us, Michael won't negotiate. He'll hunt. And you know enough about what he does to understand that you don't want him hunting you. Derek said nothing for a long moment. Then he smiled. It was thin, controlled. You're smart, Mrs. Bennett, smarter than most. But smart only gets you so far. Your husband may be dangerous, but he's one man. And right now, he's on the other side of the world. Are you sure about that? The question landed like a slap. Derek's smile faltered. He looked at Ray. Ray looked back from the kitchen doorway, a piece of chicken in his hand, grease on his chin. What's she talking about? Ray asked. Nothing, Derek said. She's bluffing. Am I? Sarah's voice was steady, almost conversational. You broke into the home of an active duty special operator without knowing his unit, his schedule, or his capabilities. You brought 3 men to a house that's been on a security watch list since the day we moved in. And you didn't sweep for communication devices before you let me stand in my own kitchen for 6 minutes. Derek's face changed. The confidence cracked. Just a fraction. Just enough for Sarah to see the doubt underneath. What communication devices, he said. Sarah said nothing. Derek stood up. The chair scraped against the floor. He walked to her and leaned down until his face was inches from hers. What did you do? I made dinner. You interrupted me. He grabbed her jaw. His fingers dug into her skin. Lily whimpered and pulled closer to her mother. If you sent a message, Derek said, his voice low and tight, if you contacted anyone, I will make this night very, very long for both of you. Sarah looked up at him with blood still drying on her cheek from where Ray had hit her. You already did. Derek released her jaw and stepped back. He pulled out his phone and dialed. Someone answered. We may have a problem, he said. She might have sent a signal before we secured her. I need you to check for monitoring on this address. Any military or law enforcement chatter. Do it now. He hung up and looked at Marcus. Sweep the house, every room, every drawer. Find whatever she used to send that message. Marcus moved. He went through the living room first. Bookshelves, side tables, the drawers of a small desk near the window. He dumped everything on the floor. Papers scattered, a vase shattered. Then he moved to the kitchen. Sarah heard him pulling open every cabinet, every drawer. The sound of her life being torn apart piece by piece. Silverware crashing, glasses breaking. Lily was crying silently now, tears running down her face without a sound. Sarah pulled her daughter's head against her chest and held it there. It's okay, she whispered. We're okay. But her eyes were on the clock. It had been 41 minutes since she sent the message. Text would be close by now. If Jake had reached him, she didn't know the details. She didn't need to. She just needed to know that somewhere out there, someone was watching. Someone was counting the minutes with her. Marcus came back from the kitchen holding Sarah's phone. He handed it to Derek. Derek scrolled through it. Calculator app. Weather app. Nothing unusual. It's clean, Marcus said. She used something, Derek muttered. He looked at the phone again, then at Sarah. Where is it? A second phone? A radio? I do not know what you're talking about. Derek threw the phone against the wall. It shattered. Lily flinched. Sarah didn't. You think this is a game? Derek's voice rose for the first time. The control was slipping. You think because your husband carries a gun and wears a flag on his shoulder, that makes you untouchable? I've dealt with military families before. They bleed just like everyone else. I never said we don't bleed, Sarah replied. I said you don't want to find out what happens after. Derek stared at her. His phone rang. He answered it without looking away from her. Talk to me. He listened. His face went pale. Not white, gray, the color of a man who has just heard something he didn't want to hear. How long ago, he asked. Then, are you sure? Then get everyone ready, full alert. He hung up. He looked at Ray and Marcus. Someone tripped the perimeter sensor on the north side of the property. Could be an animal. Could be nothing. He paused. Could be something. Ray pulled his gun and moved to the window. He pressed his back against the wall and peered through a gap in the curtain. I don't see anything. You wouldn't, Sarah said quietly. All three men looked at her. If someone is out there, she said, and if that someone is who I think it is, you won't see him until he wants you to see him. And by then it will be too late. The room went silent. Not the silence of calm. The silence of men standing on a trap door wondering when the floor would give way. Derek pulled his gun. He checked the magazine. Full. He racked the slide and held the weapon at his side. Ray, cover the back. Marcus upstairs. Every window. Report anything. They moved. Ray disappeared into the kitchen. Marcus climbed the stairs, each step groaning under his weight. Derek looked at Sarah one last time. If your people are out there, Mrs. Bennett, then you better pray they're as good as you think they are. Because if this goes wrong, you and your daughter are the first ones I reach for. Sarah held his gaze. She didn't blink. She didn't look away. She held Lily, and she breathed, and she waited. Outside in the darkness that had settled over the neighborhood like a held breath, Tex Rollins lay prone behind a row of boxwood hedges 40 yards from the Bennett house. He had a clear line of sight to the front door and partial visibility on the east side windows. His phone was on silent. His weapon was drawn. His breathing was slow and measured 4 counts in 4 counts out the way every SEAL learned to breathe when the world narrowed to a single point of focus. He had already counted 3 hostiles through the windows, 2 sidearms visible, probable long gun in the bag one of them had carried in. 1 woman, 1 child, both alive, both on the couch. He typed a message on his encrypted device. 3 hostiles confirmed, 2 pistols visible, hostages alive, no immediate threat to life, holding position, awaiting instruction. The reply came back in under a minute. From Michael, 5 words. I'm airborne, 4 hours. Tex read the message. He looked at the house. He looked at the woman sitting on that couch holding her daughter in the middle of a nightmare. And he thought about his own daughter, 7 years old, asleep in her bed in Norfolk right now, not knowing that her father was lying in the dirt with the gun in his hand because the world was never as safe as it looked. He typed back 1 word, copy, and then he settled in. Patient, still, ready, because 4 hours was a long time. And in 4 hours, everything could change. Everything could break. Everything could burn, but it could also be saved. Inside, Derek sat back down. His gun rested on his knee. His eyes moved between the windows and the woman on the couch, and for the first time since he had walked through that door, he looked like a man who was wondering if he had made the worst mistake of his life. Sarah saw it, she filed it away, and she kept counting the minutes. 2 hours and 14 minutes had passed since Sarah sent the signal. She knew because she had been counting. Not the seconds, the breaths. Every inhale was a number. Every exhale was a prayer. She had reached 1,642 breaths, and she was still alone, and Lily was still alive, and that was enough. For now, that was enough. Lily had fallen asleep against her shoulder, not a peaceful sleep, the kind of sleep that comes from exhaustion and terror where the body simply shuts down because it cannot carry the weight of being awake anymore. Sarah could feel her daughter's small chest rising and falling, and she matched her own breathing to it. In together. Out together. A rhythm that said, we are still here. We are still together. Derek had not moved from the chair. His gun was still on his knee, but something had shifted in him over the last hour. He was checking his phone every 3 minutes. Each time his jaw tightened a little more. Each time whatever he saw or didn't see on that screen pushed him further into a place Sarah recognized. She had seen it in young soldiers Michael had brought home for dinner. The look of a man who had walked into something bigger than he planned for and was just now realizing there was no clean exit. Your people aren't calling back, Sarah said. Derek looked at her. My people are fine. Then why do you keep checking your phone like a man waiting on test results? Shut up. You're scared. Derek stood up so fast the chair toppled backward. He crossed the room in 3 steps and pressed the barrel of his gun against Sarah's forehead. Lily stirred but didn't wake. Sarah didn't move. She looked up at him with the gun touching her skin, and she waited. I am not scared, Derek said through his teeth. I am in control. Do you understand me? I am in control of the situation. Then why are you shaking? He looked down at his own hand. The gun trembled, just barely, just enough. He pulled it back and turned away from her, pacing toward the window. He didn't look through it. He stood beside it, his back against the wall, breathing hard. Ray, he called out. Status? Ray's voice came from the kitchen. Nothing out back, quiet. Marcus, from upstairs. All clear up here. No movement. Derek nodded to himself. He ran a hand over his face. Then he looked at Sarah again. Your husband. Tell me about him. Why, because I want to know what I'm dealing with. Sarah almost laughed. Almost. You want to know what you're dealing with? You should have asked that question before you broke into his house. Tell me. Sarah looked at him for a long moment. Then she spoke not because he demanded it, but because she wanted him to understand. She wanted the fear to grow. Fear was her weapon now, and she intended to use every bit of it. Michael Bennett, Chief Petty Officer, SEAL Team 4. He's been deployed 11 times. He speaks 4 languages. He can put a bullet through a keyhole from 800 yards. He's been shot twice, stabbed once, and survived a helicopter crash in Afghanistan that killed 3 other men. He kept fighting with a broken collarbone and a collapsed lung. He carried his wounded teammate 2 miles to extraction on a fractured tibia. And the thing that scares people about him isn't any of that. Derek was staring at her. Then what is it? He's patient. He will wait as long as it takes. He will plan every detail. And when he moves, it will be fast, and it will be final, and you will never see it coming. Derek said nothing. The room held its breath. Then his phone rang. He grabbed it so fast he nearly dropped it. "Talk to me." The voice on the other end was loud enough that Sarah could hear it. Not the words. The tone. Urgent. Frantic. Someone was yelling. Derek's face changed. The gray came back. Deeper this time. He turned away from Sarah and lowered his voice, but she caught pieces of it. "What do you mean they found it? And how many? And that's not possible." He hung up and stood perfectly still for 5 seconds. Then he kicked the overturned chair so hard it hit the wall and cracked. "What happened?" Ray appeared in his kitchen doorway. Derek didn't answer immediately. He was thinking. Sarah could see the calculation happening behind his eyes. The math of survival. How many problems? How many exits? How many bullets? "The warehouse got raided," Derek said. "Feds. They hit it 20 minutes ago." Ray's face went white. "Which warehouse?" "The main one, Norfolk." "That's everything. That's the whole—" "I know what it is." Ray's gun hand dropped to his side. He looked at Sarah, then back at Derek. "This is connected. She sent a message. I told you she sent a message. They traced it back to—" "They didn't trace anything," Derek snapped. "The feds have been watching that warehouse for months. This was already in motion." "Then why tonight? Why the same night we're here?" Derek didn't have an answer for that. Sarah did, but she kept it behind her teeth. Michael's unit didn't just rescue families. They built cases. They gathered intelligence. And the shipment Derek's employers had lost wasn't lost at all. It had been intercepted as part of a federal operation that had been running for over a year. Derek and his men weren't the hunters tonight. They were the last loose thread. "We need to leave," Ray said. His voice was climbing. The twitchiness that Sarah had noticed when he first walked in was coming back, amplified now by genuine panic. "Derek, we need to go. Right now. We're not leaving without leverage." "Leverage? The whole operation is blown. They've got the warehouse, they've got the product, and in about 2 hours they're going to have names. Our names. Which is exactly why we need the woman. She's our only card left." Ray pointed his gun at Sarah. His hand was shaking badly now. "Then let's take her and go. Grab the kid. We put them in the truck and we drive." "And go where?" Derek's voice cut through Ray's panic like a blade. "Where exactly do you think we go? You think we outrun the federal government in an SUV with a woman and a child? You think that ends well for us? It ends better than staying here and waiting for a SEAL team to kick down the door. One man, Ray. One man. Not a team. One man who is thousands of miles away. You don't know that." She said what she said to scare you, and it's working. So pull yourself together. Ray was breathing fast. His eyes darted between Derek, Sarah, and the back door. He was calculating too, but his math was simpler. Run or die. Those were the only two numbers Ray knew how to add. Marcus came down the stairs. He moved slowly, deliberately. When he reached the bottom, he looked at Derek and said the first full sentence Sarah had heard from him all night. "There's a car parked at the end of the block that wasn't there an hour ago. Black sedan, no lights, someone's inside." The room froze. Derek walked to the front window and pressed himself against the wall. He tilted his head and looked through the gap in the curtain. He stayed there for a long time. Then he stepped back. "Could be nothing." "It's not nothing," Marcus said. "I've been watching it. The driver hasn't moved, hasn't checked a phone, hasn't adjusted the mirror. He's just sitting there. Still, like he's trained to sit still." Sarah's heart kicked. Tex. It had to be Tex. She didn't know him well. She'd met him twice at unit barbecues. A tall Texan with a slow drawl and hands the size of dinner plates. Michael trusted him with his life. That meant Sarah trusted him with hers. "We're being watched," Ray said. His voice cracked on the last word. I told you this was wrong. We should have grabbed her and gone. In and out, 5 minutes. That was the plan. Not this. Not sitting here like—" "Ray?" Derek's voice was ice. "If you don't shut your mouth right now, I will shut it for you." Ray went quiet, but his gun hand was shaking worse than before, and the muzzle kept sweeping towards Sarah and Lily, unintentional, careless. The most dangerous kind of threat. Sarah pulled Lily closer. Point that somewhere else, she said to Ray. Don't tell me what to do. You're going to accidentally shoot a child. I said, don't tell me what to do. Oh, Derek stepped between them. He put his hand on Ray's gun and pushed it down toward the floor. She's right. Control your weapon. Ray yanked his arm away but lowered the gun. He retreated to the kitchen and Sarah heard him open the back door. Cold air rushed in. He was checking the yard, looking for ghosts. Derek sat down on the arm of the couch close enough to Sarah that she could smell his cologne. Something expensive. The kind of scent a man wears when he wants to feel powerful. Here's what's going to happen, he said, his voice low enough that only she could hear. In about 30 minutes, a vehicle is going to pull up to this house. You and your daughter are going to walk out the front door with me. You're going to smile, you're going to look calm, and you're going to get in that vehicle. If you do anything else, if you scream, if you run, if you signal whoever is sitting in that car down the block, I will put a bullet in your daughter's spine. Do you understand? Sarah looked at him. You won't. Try me. You won't because you need us alive. You said it yourself. We're your only card. Alive doesn't mean undamaged, Mrs. Bennett. A bullet in the leg, a broken arm. There are many ways to keep someone alive and still make a point. Sarah's stomach turned. She believed him. Not because of his words, but because of his eyes. There was nothing in them. No anger, no cruelty, just emptiness. The void where a conscience should have been. 30 minutes, he said. He stood up and walked back to the window. Sarah looked down at Lily, still sleeping, still breathing. 3 hours since the signal. Michael said 4 hours. 1 more hour, 60 minutes, 3,600 seconds. She started counting again. At the 43-minute mark of the third hour, something changed. The power went out. The entire house plunged into darkness. Not just the house. Sarah could see through the crack in the curtains that the streetlights were gone too. The whole block was dark. Ray cursed from the kitchen. Marcus's heavy footsteps crossed the floor above them. Derek pulled out his phone and used the flashlight, sweeping it across the room. The beam caught Sarah's face. She didn't squint. She didn't look away. Generator? Derek asked her. We don't have one. Convenient. It's a neighborhood, not a military base. Power goes out. Derek stared at her. He didn't believe it. She could see it, and she didn't care because she didn't believe it either. Power doesn't go out by accident at the exact moment someone needs it to go out. Marcus, get down here, now. Marcus came down the stairs fast. For a big man, he could move when he needed to. The three men stood in the darkened living room, phones out, flashlights, crossing shadows, jumping. Someone cut the power, Derek said. Or it's a coincidence, Marcus said. You believe in coincidences. Marcus didn't answer. Ray checked the breaker box. Where is it? Derek looked at Sarah. She said nothing. Where is the breaker box? Derek repeated. Garage. Ray moved toward the garage door. He opened it and stepped into the darkness. Sarah heard his footsteps on concrete, then silence. Then his voice thin and strained. Derek, the garage door is open. What? The garage door, it's up. It was closed when we got here. I checked. It's open now. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Lily woke up. She lifted her head from Sarah's shoulder and blinked into the darkness. Mom, why is it dark? Shh, baby, it's okay. The power went out. I'm scared. I know. Hold my hand. Squeeze tight. Lily squeezed. 3 times, I love you. Sarah squeezed back. 3 times, I love you too. Derek was on the phone again, whispering. Sarah caught fragments. Perimeter compromised, impossible breach. And I don't care, get here now. He hung up and turned to Marcus. We're leaving, now, not in 30 minutes. Now. Marcus nodded. He moved toward Sarah and reached for Lily. Sarah stood up. She held Lily behind her. Don't touch her. Mrs. Bennett, I said don't touch her. Marcus looked at Derek. Derek nodded. Fine, you carry her, but we move. Now. Ray came back from the garage. His face was slick with sweat even though the house was cold. I couldn't find the breaker. And there's something else. There's a smell in the garage. Like, I don't know. Like metal. Like what? Like someone was just in there. The fear in Ray's voice was naked now. Not hidden, not managed. Pure, unfiltered terror. He was a man who had spent his life being the threat, and for the first time, he was on the other side of it. Derek grabbed Sarah's arm. "We go out the back. Ray, you take point. Marcus rear guard. The woman and the kids stay between us." They moved through the kitchen. Sarah carried Lily on her hip. The girl wrapped her legs around her mother's waist and buried her face in Sarah's neck. Sarah could feel her daughter's tears warm against her skin. Ray opened the back door. He stepped out first, gun raised, scanning the yard. After a moment, he waved them forward. Derek pushed Sarah out the door. They crossed the yard in a tight group, Ray in front, Derek beside Sarah, Marcus behind them walking backward, watching the house. They reached the fence at the back of the property. "Awful," Derek said. Ray climbed the fence. Marcus lifted Sarah and Lily over. Derek went last. They dropped into the alley behind the house. The SUV was parked 50 yards to the left. They started walking. That's when Sarah heard it. Not a sound exactly, more like the absence of one. The crickets had stopped. The frogs had stopped. Every living thing in that alley had gone silent the way animals go silent when a predator enters the territory. Ray heard it too. He stopped walking. "Something's wrong." "Keep moving," Derek hissed. "No, listen, do you hear that?" "I don't hear anything." Exactly. They stood in the alley, 4 adults and 1 child, surrounded by darkness and silence. Derek's flashlight cut a narrow beam through the black. It hit the fence, the garbage cans, the concrete, nothing. Then the flashlight flickered and died. Derek shook it, smacked it against his palm. Dead. Ray lifted his phone. The screen was black. He pressed the button. Nothing. Marcus tried his. Same. Dead. Sarah felt it then. A pulse in the air, something electronic, something that killed devices within a certain radius. She had heard Michael talk about it once. A localized EMP burst, small, portable, the kind of thing SEAL teams carried for specific situations. They were here. Derek knew it too. She could feel it in the grip on her arm. His fingers had gone rigid. His breathing had changed, short, rapid, shallow. The breathing of a man whose body was preparing to fight or die. "Derek," Marcus said from behind them. His voice was the calmest it had been all night, and somehow that made it worse. "We're not alone." "I know. What do we do?" Derek didn't answer. Because there was no answer. There was no play. There was no card left to deal. He was standing in a dark alley with dead electronics in dead silence, in the growing certainty that somewhere in that blackness, something was looking at him through a scope. He pulled Sarah in front of him, her back against his chest, his gun against her temple. "If you're out there," he shouted into the darkness, "I've got the woman. You hear me? I've got the woman and the child. Back off or I'll kill them both." His voice echoed off the fences and the walls and dissolved into nothing. No response, just silence. And then from somewhere close, so close that it might have been standing right beside them, a voice. Low, calm, controlled. The voice of a man who had spoken to people like Derek 100 times before in 100 dark places around the world. "You've got about 5 seconds to take that gun off my wife." Derek's hand trembled against Sarah's temple. His breath was hot on the back of her neck. And for the first time all night, he said something honest. "Oh God, 5 seconds." That was what Michael gave him. And Derek used 3 of them doing the stupidest thing he could have done. He tightened his grip on Sarah and pushed the gun harder against her temple. "Stay back!" Derek screamed into the darkness. "I'll do it. I swear to God, I'll do it." Sarah didn't move. She didn't flinch. She held Lily against her chest and she breathed. Because she knew that voice. She knew it the way she knew her own heartbeat. And she knew that when Michael Bennett said 5 seconds, he meant 5 seconds. The 4th second passed. On the 5th, something happened so fast that none of the 3 men ever fully understood it. There was a sound, sharp and dry like a branch snapping. Derek's gun flew out of his hand, not dropped, launched, ripped from his fingers by a force that shattered 2 of his knuckles and sent the weapon spinning into the darkness. Derek screamed and grabbed his hand, and in the space between that scream and the next breath, Sarah dropped to the ground with Lily and rolled left. Then Michael was there. He came out of the darkness the way darkness moves into a room when someone turns off the light. One moment and he wasn't. The next moment he was. He hit Derek center mass with a shoulder strike that lifted the man off his feet and drove him backward into the fence. The wood cracked. Derek's head snapped back. Before he could recover, Michael had his wrists locked, his arm twisted behind his back and his face pressed into the concrete. "Don't move," Michael said. His voice hadn't changed. Still low, still calm. The voice of a man performing a task he had performed 1,000 times. Ray ran. He turned and sprinted down the alley toward the SUV, his shoes slapping the pavement. He made it 15 yards before a shape materialized from behind a dumpster and clotheslined him across the chest. Ray went down hard, the back of his skull bouncing off the concrete. Tex Rollins stood over him, caught the pistol as it skittered across the ground and pressed his boot against Ray's sternum. "Evening," Tex said. Ray wheezed. He tried to speak. Nothing came out. Marcus was the last one standing. He was the biggest, the strongest, and the smartest of the three, because when he looked at Derek pinned to the ground and Ray flat on his back and two men who moved like ghosts standing over them, he did the math. He calculated the odds, and he set his gun on the ground, put his hands behind his head, and knelt down. "I'm done," Marcus said. "I'm not fighting this." A third figure appeared from the shadows. Jake Torres. He moved to Marcus, kicked the gun away, and zip-tied his wrists with a practiced motion that took less than 2 seconds. "Smart man," Jake said. Michael didn't look up from Derek. He had the man's arm locked at an angle that was 1 inch from dislocation. Derek was gasping, his broken hand throbbing, his face scraped raw against the pavement. "Sarah." Michael's voice softened. "Just barely. Just enough. You okay?" Sarah was on her knees in the alley, holding Lily so tight the girl could barely breathe. Tears were streaming down her face. Not fear, not anymore. Relief, the kind of relief that comes after you've been holding your breath for 3.5 hours and someone finally tells you it's safe to exhale. "We're okay," she said. Her voice broke on the second word. "We're okay, Michael." "Lily. She's here. She's safe." Michael closed his eyes for 1 second. Just one. Then he opened them and looked down at Derek. "You put a gun to my wife's head." Derek said nothing. He was trying to breathe through the pain. His broken fingers were swelling, fast, turning purple in the dim light. "You threatened my daughter." Still nothing. Michael leaned down until his mouth was next to Derek's ear. "I want you to remember this moment. I want you to remember what it feels like to be on the ground, helpless with someone else, in control of whether you live or die. Because this is what you did to my family tonight. This is what you put them through. And you're going to carry this feeling with you for every single day you spend in a cell." Derek finally spoke. His voice was thin, broken. "You don't understand. They made me do this. The people I work for, I don't care. They would have killed me if I didn't. I don't care. Please, just listen. I had no choice." Michael pulled Derek up to his knees. He held him there by the collar, face to face, close enough that Derek could see Michael's eyes even in the darkness. And what Derek saw in those eyes made him stop talking, made him stop breathing, made him understand in one terrifying moment of clarity that the man in front of him was not angry. Anger would have been manageable. Anger burns out. What Michael Bennett was showing him was something much worse. Control. Absolute, unwavering, ice-cold control. The look of a man who could break every bone in Derek's body and never raise his pulse above 60. "You had a choice," Michael said. "You chose wrong." He released Derek's collar and let him slump to the ground. Then he stood up and walked to Sarah. He knelt down in front of her. He put his hands on her face. His thumbs wiped the tears from her cheeks. Lily was between them, her small hands gripping Michael's jacket, her face buried in his chest. "Daddy," she said, just that one word, and it contained everything. Michael pulled them both in. He held his wife and his daughter in the middle of a dark alley in a quiet neighborhood where nothing bad was ever supposed to happen, and he held them like a man who had just outrun the worst nightmare of his life. "I'm here," he said. "I'm here. It's over." Sarah pressed her forehead against his. "How did you get here so fast?" "They said 4 hours. I made them fly faster." She laughed. It came out broken and wet and raw, and it was the most beautiful sound Michael had ever heard. "The pilot's going to hate me," he said. "We burned through a month's worth of fuel in 2 hours. Thank the pilot for me. I'll buy him a steak." They held each other for a long moment. Tex and Jake handled the prisoners. Zip ties on wrists, weapons collected, Phones confiscated, though the EMP had already killed them. The alley was secure. The neighborhood was still dark and silent, sleeping through a war it would never know about. Michael stood up. He kept one hand on Sarah's shoulder, unwilling to break contact. He looked at Tex. "How long were you here?" "Got on site about 2 hours and 40 minutes ago. Took position behind the hedges on the north side. Had eyes on 3 hostiles through the front windows. Couldn't get a clean angle on all 3 from any single position, so I held." "You tripped their perimeter sensor." Tex grinned. "That was on purpose. Wanted to rattle them, see how they reacted. It told me a lot. The big one is disciplined. The skinny one is a liability. And that one," he nodded toward Derek, "is the brains," which isn't saying much. Michael looked at Jake. "The power for local transformer. Took it offline remotely through the utility company's emergency system. Captain Morrison pulled some strings. And the EMP." Jake reached into his vest and pulled out a device the size of a coffee thermos. "Borrowed it from the tech guys at Dam Neck, short range. Kills everything electronic within about 30 meters for approximately 6 minutes. You brought that on a domestic op." "I brought everything on a domestic op. Your wife and kid were in there, Mike." Michael nodded. He looked at Derek again. The man was sitting on the ground, cradling his broken hands, staring at the pavement. Ray was still flat on his back, Tex's boot on his chest. Marcus knelt silently, his hands bound, his head down. "What did they want?" Michael asked Sarah. "They said you intercepted a shipment. $47 million. They wanted you to give it back." Michael's jaw tightened. "The coastal wind operation, I figured. That was a federal seizure. DEAN-CIS. Everything went to evidence. I never touched a dollar of it." "I know. These people think I kept it. Or their bosses told them you kept it. Either way, they were willing to use us to get to you." Michael looked at Derek one more time. "Who do you work for?" Derek didn't answer. "I asked you a question." Silence. Michael walked toward him. Derek flinched. It was involuntary. The kind of flinch a man makes when he's been hit enough times to know what's coming. But Michael didn't touch him. He crouched down and waited. "You have 2 options," Michael said. "You talk to me right now and I tell the federal agents who are about to arrive that you cooperated. Or you stay quiet and I tell them nothing. And then you go into a system where the people you work for can reach you. Because they're going to find out about tonight. They're going to find out you failed. And they're going to wonder what you told us." Derek's breathing quickened. He understood the threat, not from Michael, from his own employers. The people who had sent him here, the people who didn't tolerate failure. "Volkov," Derek whispered, louder. "Anatoly Volkov. He runs the distribution network on the East Coast. He's the one who ordered this. He said, grab the wife, use her as leverage, get Bennett to return the shipment, or reveal where it was rerouted." "Where is Volkov now?" "I don't know. He moves. He never stays in one place more than 2 days." "How do you contact him?" "Encrypted app. Changes every 72 hours. The last one was Signal with a rotating key." "Who else is involved?" Derek hesitated. He looked at Marcus. Marcus stared at the ground. He looked at Ray. Ray was barely conscious. "There's a handler," Derek said. "A woman. She calls herself Nadia. She's Volkov's lieutenant. She coordinates everything. She picked the target. She planned the entry. She gave us the address, the phone number, the photograph of your husband." Sarah's blood went cold. "Someone gave you our address." Derek looked at her. Something that might have been shame crossed his face. "Yes." "Who? How did they get it?" "I don't know. Nadia had it. She had everything. Your schedules, your daughter's school, your husband's deployment calendar." Someone on the inside was feeding her information. The words hit Michael like a physical blow. Someone on the inside. That meant someone in the military. Someone with access to classified personnel files. Someone who had sold his family's safety for money. "Jake," Michael said. His voice had changed. The calm was still there, but underneath it, something burned. "Did you hear that?" "Every word," Jake said. "I'm already composing the message to Morrison. This goes up the chain tonight. It goes higher than Morrison, Shum. It goes as high as it needs to go." Michael stood up. He walked back to Sarah and Lily. Lily had stopped crying. She was watching her father with eyes that were too old for her face. eyes that had seen things tonight that no 11-year-old should ever see. Daddy, are the bad men going away? Yes, baby, they're going away for a very long time. Are more coming? Michael hesitated. He looked at Sarah. She looked back at him, and in that look was the same question. Are more coming? Because if someone inside the military was selling information to Volkov, then tonight wasn't the end. It was the beginning. No one else is coming, Michael said. He squeezed Lily's hand 3 times. She squeezed back 3 times. I love you. I love you too. The same code Sarah used. The family language that no one else could speak. Sirens rose in the distance. Blue and red lights appeared at the end of the block, moving slowly, no urgency now. The tactical team Captain Morrison had staged was rolling in. 3 unmarked vehicles. Federal plates. Tex pulled Ray to his feet. Ray wobbled his eyes unfocused. I think I have a concussion, he muttered. You definitely have a concussion, Tex said, and a few felony charges. But we'll let the doctors sort out the concussion first. Jake brought Marcus forward. The big man walked without resistance. He looked at Michael as he passed. For what it's worth, Marcus said. I didn't want to do this. But you did it, Michael said. Marcus dropped his head and said nothing else. Derek was the last one, Fimon. Michael hauled him to his feet. Derek's broken hand hung at his side, swollen and useless. His face was raw from the concrete. His gray jacket was torn at the shoulder. One more question, Michael said. Derek looked at him. When you put that gun to her head, when you threatened my daughter, did you think about what would happen? Did you think about what kind of man would come for you? Derek swallowed. No. Why not? Because I didn't think anyone would come at all. I thought you were deployed. I thought you were gone. Michael leaned in close. I'm never gone. You understand, I'm never too far. I'm never too late. That's not a boast. That's not a threat. That's a promise I made the day my daughter was born. And I will keep that promise until I'm dead. He pushed Derek toward the federal agents who were now moving down the alley. 2 agents took Derek by the arms. A third began reading rights. Derek went quietly, his broken hand pressed against his chest, his head down. Sarah watched them take him away. She watched Ray stumble between 2 agents still dazed. She watched Marcus walk with his head bowed. 3 men who had walked into her home believing they held all the power. 3 men who had learned in the span of one night. That power is not about guns or numbers or money. Power is about knowing what you're willing to die for and having the skills to protect it. The federal team lead approached carrying a woman in her 40s with short gray hair and sharp eyes. Chief Bennett, Special Agent Diana Cole, NCIS. Agent Cole, we've been running Coastal Wind for 14 months. Your report from the field triggered the warehouse raid tonight. We didn't know about the threat to your family until Captain Morrison contacted us 40 minutes ago. 40 minutes ago, my wife had a gun to her head. Agent Cole held his gaze. I understand, and I'm sorry, but I need you to know we're going to find the leak. Whoever gave your address to these people, whoever compromised your family's security, we will find them. You better. We will, Chief. That's my promise. Michael looked at her for a long moment, measuring her the way he measured everyone. Then he nodded. I'll hold you to that. Agent Cole turned to Sarah. Mrs. Bennett, we're going to need a full statement from you, everything they said, everything they did, every detail you can remember. Sarah nodded. I remember everything. We'll send a team to your house to process the scene. In the meantime, is there somewhere you and your daughter can stay tonight? Sarah looked at Michael. He looked back at her. For the first time since he'd appeared in that alley, she saw the exhaustion behind his eyes. The weight of it. He had crossed oceans and continents and time zones to get here. He had burned every favor broken, every protocol pushed every machine and every man beyond their limits. And now he was standing in an alley in Virginia, holding his family running on nothing but adrenaline and love. We'll figure it out, Sarah said. Michael wrapped his arm around her. Lily reached up and took his hand. They stood there while the federal agents worked the scene, while radios crackled and flashlights swept, and the pieces of a criminal operation were collected and cataloged and prepared for prosecution. They stood in the middle of all of it, and they held on to each other. Tex walked over after the prisoners were loaded into vehicles. He had a small cut above his eye from where Ray had flailed during the takedown. He wiped the blood with the back of his hand. Mike? Tex. Hell of a night. Yeah. Tex looked at Sarah. Ma'am, for what it's worth, you're the toughest person I've ever met, and I don't say that lightly. Sarah smiled, a real smile, tired and broken and real. I had good training. Tex laughed. He slapped Michael on the shoulder. She's better than you, brother. I know, Michael said. I've always known. Jake joined them. He had his phone in his hand, a new one pulled from his kit. Morrison just confirmed. The warehouse raid netted 18 arrests, 43 kilos of product, financial records going back 3 years, and 2 laptops that are already being decrypted. Volkov. Not yet, but with what Derek gave us and what's on those laptops, it's only a matter of time. Michael nodded. In the leak, Jake's face tightened. Morrison is keeping that close. But only 3 people might know about it. Him, me, and you. Until we identify the source, nothing goes through normal channels. Good. Sarah looked at Michael. You're not done, are you? He met her eyes. He wanted to lie. He wanted to tell her it was over, that the nightmare ended tonight, that they could go home and lock the doors and sleep. But he couldn't lie to her. Not after what she had survived. No, he said. I'm not done. She nodded. She didn't argue. She didn't beg him to stop. She didn't ask him to choose between his family and his duty, because she understood something that most people never would. Michael Bennett didn't choose between his family and his mission. His family was his mission. Protecting them meant finishing what started tonight. It meant finding Volkov. It meant finding the traitor who sold their address. It meant making sure no one ever stood in their kitchen again with a gun and a threat and a sick sense of entitlement. Then finish it, Sarah said, but come home. Michael pulled her close. He pressed his lips to her forehead. He breathed her in, sweat and fear and blood and home. Always, he said. Lily looked up at both of them. Her face was pale. Her eyes were red, but she wasn't crying anymore. She was watching her parents the way children watch the people they trust most in the world, searching for the signal that tells them everything is going to be all right. Sarah squeezed her hand 3 times. Lily squeezed back 3 times, and somewhere in the dark, a car engine started. Federal agents moved through the night. Radios hummed, evidence was bagged and sealed. A case that had been building for 14 months was finally cracking open, and at the center of it stood a family that had been broken into and threatened and terrorized and had refused to break. Michael looked down the alley one last time. The SUV Derek's team had come in was being towed away. The black sedan Tex had parked at the end of the block was gone. The neighborhood was still dark, still silent, but it wouldn't be silent for long. Tomorrow the neighbors would wake up and see police tape and federal vehicles, and they would ask each other what happened, and no one would ever know the full truth. No one would ever know how close it came. But Michael knew, Sarah knew, and that knowledge sat between them like a stone neither of them would ever be able to put down. He took one breath, let it out slow. Then he picked up. Lily took Sarah's hand and walked toward the waiting vehicles, leaving the alley behind them, but carrying every second of this night forward into whatever came next. 3 days passed before Sarah walked back into her own house. She stood in the doorway for a full minute, holding Lily's hand, staring at the hallway where Derek had grabbed her jaw, the wall where Ray had backhanded her, the kitchen floor where they had pressed a gun to her skull. The house looked the same. The house felt like a stranger's. Mom, Lily tugged her hand. Are we going inside? Sarah took a breath. Yeah, baby, we're going inside. They had spent those 3 days at a Navy safe house in Norfolk, a small apartment with white walls and no photographs and locks on every door that required a code to open. Federal agents had come and gone. Sarah had given her statement 4 times to 4 different people. She described every word Derek had spoken, every threat Ray had made, every silent, heavy step Marcus had taken through her home. She told them about the phone call from Patriot Federal. She told them about the photograph of Michael in the parking lot. She told them about Nadia, the woman Derek had mentioned, the handler, who had their address, their schedules, their daughter's school. Each time she finished, she felt emptier. Not lighter. Emptier. Like telling the story over and over was draining something out of her that she might never get back. Michael had stayed with them for the first 36 hours. He didn't sleep. He sat in a chair by the door of the safe house with his phone in his hand, reading encrypted messages, making calls in a low voice, pacing the small living room like a man trapped in a cage that was too small for his anger. When Lily finally fell asleep that first night, Sarah found him standing in the kitchen, both hands flat on the counter, his head down. Michael. He didn't turn around. Michael, look at me. He turned, his eyes were red, not from crying, from holding it in, from compressing everything he felt into a space small enough to function around. She knew that look. She had seen it after his second deployment, when he came home and couldn't sleep for a month. She had seen it after Afghanistan, when he spent 3 weeks pretending he was fine before she found him sitting in the garage at 2 a.m. staring at his hands. I should have been there, he said. You were there. You got there. 3.5 hours, Sarah. 3.5 hours they had you. They had Lily. And I was lying in a ditch on the other side of the world. And you got on a helicopter and you flew across an ocean and you came home. That's what matters. It's not enough. She walked to him. She put her hands on his face the way he had put his hands on hers in the alley. She made him look at her. It was enough, she said. You trained me, you prepared me. Every drill, every conversation, every code word. I used all of it, and it worked. We're alive because you planned for this. You planned for the worst day of our lives, and when it came, we were ready. A sound came out of him, not a word, not a sob, something between the two. He pulled her in and held her, and they stood in that ugly kitchen in that temporary apartment, and he shook. The man who had neutralized 3 armed criminals without raising his voice shook in his wife's arms like a child. I can't lose you, he said. I can't. I won't survive it. You won't lose me. I'm right here. What if next time I'm too far? Then I'll hold on until you get there. That's what I do. That's what I'll always do. He held her tighter. She let him. She held him back. 2 people in a dark kitchen carrying a weight that would have crushed anyone else choosing to carry it together. The next morning, Michael got a call that changed everything. He took it in the bathroom with the door closed, but Sarah heard his voice rise. Once. Sharp. Then silence, or terminal. When he came out, his face was different. Harder. Set. The face of a man who had just received orders he didn't like but would follow anyway. What is it? Sarah asked. They found the leak. Was it? Sarah's stomach dropped. Who? Michael sat down across from her. He rubbed his face with both hands. When he looked up, she saw something in his eyes she had never seen before. Betrayal. Lieutenant Commander Garrett Hayes. Sarah felt the name like a punch. Garrett Hayes. They knew him. He had been to their house. He had eaten at their table. He had held Lily when she was 2 years old and bounced her on his knee and called her little bird. He was Michael's logistics officer. He had access to deployment schedules, personnel files, home addresses. He had access to everything. No, Sarah whispered. Not Garrett. He's been feeding information to Volkov's network for 8 months in exchange for money. A lot of money. Enough to buy a house in the Outer Banks and a boat he couldn't explain on a military salary. How did they find him? The laptops from the warehouse raid. His email was on a contact list alongside Nadia's handler notes. When NCIS pulled his financial records, the payments matched Volkov's accounts almost dollar for dollar. Sarah pressed her hand against her mouth. She thought about Garrett sitting at their dining table last Thanksgiving. Michael had carved the turkey. Garrett had brought wine. He'd told jokes. He'd helped Lily with a puzzle. And the whole time he was selling them to a man who would eventually send 3 armed strangers to put a gun to her head. Does he know they found him? Not yet. Morrison is bringing him in today. Quiet. No warning. Will he talk? He'll talk. Because the alternative is spending the rest of his life in a military prison without any protection from Volkov's people. And Garrett is a lot of things, but he's not stupid. He'll trade everything he knows for a reduced sentence. And Volkov, Michael leaned back. That's why I have to go. Sarah closed her eyes. She knew this was coming. She had known it since the alley. Since he'd said, I'm not done. Since she'd told him to finish it. When tomorrow. Where, I can't tell you that. How long? He paused. I don't know. She opened her eyes and looked at him. Promise me you will come back. I always come back. Promise me. I promise. He left the next morning before Lily woke up. He kissed Sarah at the door. He held her face in his hands and looked at her like he was memorizing every line, every freckle, every scar. Then he squeezed her hand 3 times and walked out. Sarah watched him go. She didn't cry. She had used up her tears. What replaced them was something stronger. Something built from 3.5 hours of captivity and 41 minutes of silence, and a lifetime of being married to a man who walked toward danger while the rest of the world ran away. She was not the same woman who had been stirring chili when the phone rang. That woman was gone. In her place stood someone forged by fire and terror and love. Someone who would never be a victim again. 2 weeks later, Michael called. It was 4 in the morning. Sarah was lying in bed in their house, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep the way she'd been unable to sleep every night since they came home. The phone buzzed on the nightstand. She grabbed it before the first ring finished. Michael. It's done. 2 words. She closed her eyes and pressed the phone against her face. Volkov, in custody, International Task Force picked him up in Montenegro. He had 2 bodyguards and a go bag. He was 12 hours from disappearing. And Nadia, arrested in New York yesterday, FBI took her at a hotel in Midtown. She had files on 37 military families, addresses, schedules, deployment dates. She was building a database to sell to the highest bidder. Sarah felt sick. 37 families, 37 wives, 37 children. People just like her and Lily who could have ended up sitting on their own couches with guns pointed at their heads. It's over, she asked. The network is dismantled. Volkov is done. Hayes is cooperating. He's given up every contact, every payment, every piece of information he sold. NCS is restructuring the entire personnel security system because of this. New protocols, new safeguards. It won't happen again. You can't promise that. No, but I can promise that I made it as hard as possible. Sarah smiled in the darkness. When are you coming home? 48 hours. I'll be here. I know you will. Silence, the kind of silence that isn't empty. The kind that's full of everything 2 people want to say but don't need to because they already know. Michael. Yeah, I love you. I love you too. Tell Lily I'm bringing her something. What a story. She's going to want details. She can have the ones that won't give her nightmares. I'll make up the rest. Sarah laughed, a real laugh. The first real laugh in 17 days. It hurt her ribs and healed something deeper. Michael came home on a Thursday afternoon. Lily was sitting on the front porch doing homework when the car pulled into the driveway. She looked up. She dropped her pencil. She ran. Michael caught her in the driveway and lifted her off the ground. She wrapped her arms around his neck and buried her face in his shoulder and said, "You came back. I told you I would. I know, but I was scared you wouldn't. I will always come back, Lily, every single time. That's the deal." What deal? The deal I made with the universe the day you were born. I told it that no matter what, no matter where, no matter how far, I would always find my way home to you and your mom. And the universe said, okay. Lily pulled back and looked at him. The universe doesn't talk, Dad. Sure it does. You just have to know how to listen. She smiled. It was the first smile that reached her eyes since that night. Michael carried her inside. Sarah was standing in the hallway. She had been watching through the window. She didn't run. She didn't need to. He came to her. He set Lily down and he walked to his wife, and he stood in front of her in the hallway of the house where the worst night of their lives had happened, and he took her hands. "Hi," he said. "Hi. The kitchen smells good. I made chili." He blinked. Chili? I needed to finish what I started. He understood. It wasn't about the food. It was about reclaiming something, taking back the moment that had been stolen. The ordinary, beautiful, unremarkable act of standing in her kitchen, stirring a pot, humming along to music being safe. She was rewriting the memory, overwriting the terror with something warm. "Can I help?" he asked. "You can set the table." He set the table. 3 places, the same plates, the same forks. Lily sat in her chair and told Michael about school, about her friend Jessica, who got a new puppy, about a math test she aced even though she hadn't studied because her brain had been too busy being brave. Michael listened to every word. He laughed at the right moments. He asked the right questions. And under the table, he held Sarah's hand the entire time. After dinner, after Lily was in bed, after the dishes were done and the leftovers were put away, Michael and Sarah sat on the back porch. The night was warm. The neighborhood was quiet. The same neighborhood where 3 weeks ago men with guns had driven an SUV to their door and tried to take everything. Garrett pled guilty, Michael said. Full cooperation agreement. He's looking at 12 years. Good. He wrote me a letter. Sarah looked at him. Did you read it? Yeah. What did it say? He said he was sorry. He said the money started small. A few thousand here and there for information he thought was harmless. Deployment dates, unit assignments, nothing operational. But then they wanted more, and the money got bigger. And by the time he realized what he was doing, he was in too deep to stop. Do you believe him? Michael thought about it. I believe he's sorry. I believe he's scared, but I don't believe he didn't know what he was doing. He knew the moment he took that first payment. He knew and he did it anyway. Did you write back? No. Are you going to? No. Sarah nodded. She didn't push. Some doors once closed need to stay closed. They sat in silence for a while. The good kind. The kind that comes from having nothing left to prove and nothing left to hide. Two people who had been tested in the worst possible way and had come through it not unscathed, not undamaged, but unbroken. I've been thinking, Sarah said, about what I want to do next. Michael turned to her. What do you mean? I was helpless in there, Michael. I know I held it together. I know I did what I was supposed to do. But I was helpless. I couldn't fight them. I couldn't protect Lily on my own. I need that to change. What are you thinking, right, Bomb? I want to train, really train, not just the codes and the signals. I want to learn how to fight, how to shoot, how to handle a weapon, so that next time, if there ever is a next time, I'm not waiting for someone to save me. Michael studied her face. You saved yourself, Sarah. You kept Lily safe for 3.5 hours. You sent the signal. You played Derek perfectly. You bought the time we needed. And I want to do more. I need to do more. For me. He reached over and took her hand. Then we start tomorrow. Tomorrow. First thing, I'll teach you everything I know. That could take a while. I've got time. She leaned her head against his shoulder. He put his arm around her. They sat on the porch where the streetlights were finally back on, where the neighbors were sleeping peacefully, where the world had returned to its ordinary, imperfect, beautiful self. Michael. Yeah. Thank you for coming home. Thank you for holding on. She squeezed his hand 3 times. He squeezed back 3 times. Lily's bedroom window was open and a breeze carried through the house, carrying with it the smell of chili and clean sheets and all the small sacred things that make a home worth defending. Inside on Lily's bedside table, a small piece of paper was folded in half. She had written it that afternoon in purple marker, the handwriting of a child who had seen too much and understood more than anyone her age should. It said, "My dad is a hero. My mom is braver. Together they are unstoppable. I love them to infinity in 3 squeezes. 3 squeezes." That was the Bennett language. 3 squeezes for I love you. 3 squeezes for I'm here. 3 squeezes for we made it. Downstairs, Sarah turned off the kitchen light. Michael locked the front door, checked the back door, tested every window on the first floor. Old habits and new necessities combined into a single ritual that would become part of their life from this night forward. He set the alarm system, a new one installed by the Navy 2 days ago, with sensors on every entry point and a direct line to the base security office. He climbed the stairs. He stopped at Lily's door and there looked in. She was sleeping. Really sleeping this time. Not the exhausted collapse of a terrified child. The deep, soft breathing of a girl who knew her father was home and her mother was strong and the doors were locked and the world for tonight at least was safe. He walked to his bedroom. Sarah was already in bed. He lay down beside her. She rolled toward him and put her head on his chest. He put his arm around her. Her hand rested over his heart and she felt it beating. Steady, strong. The heartbeat of a man who had crossed the world to keep a promise. Michael. Yeah, 5 seconds. What? You gave him 5 seconds in the alley. You said he had 5 seconds to take the gun off me. Yeah. What would you have done on 6 directors? He was quiet for a moment. Then he kissed the top of her head. You'll never have to know. She closed her eyes. He closed his. And the house settled around them, creaking and breathing the way old houses do, holding them inside its walls, the way it had always held them through deployments and homecomings and birthdays and nightmares, and one terrible night that could have ended everything but didn't. Because Derek Ward learned something that night. Ray learned it. Marcus learned it. Garrett Hayes learned it from a prison cell. Anatoly Volkov learned it from a detention facility in Montenegro. And Nadia learned it from a federal courtroom in Manhattan. You don't threaten a Navy SEAL's family. Not because he will come for you with fury and vengeance and chaos, but because he will come for you with precision and patience and the unshakable certainty of a man who has already decided how this ends. He will come quiet, he will come calm, and he will dismantle everything you built, everything you planned, everything you thought protected you, and he will do it without raising his voice. And the woman standing beside him, the woman you thought was the weak link, the easy target, the leverage, she was never weak. She was never easy. She was the reason he fights. She was the reason he comes home. And she was the reason you lost before you even walked through the door. Sarah Bennett stirred chili on a Tuesday evening and survived the worst night of her life. Michael Bennett crossed an ocean and kept a promise. And Lily Bennett wrote a note in purple marker that said everything anyone ever needed to know about what it means to be a family that refuses to break. 3 squeezes, always 3 squeezes, and always, always, always he comes home.